Marcus screamed as the whip cracked across his back for the 10th time. Blood soaked his tunic, and he bit down hard on his lip to keep from crying out again. Around him, other slaves watched in silence, their faces pale with fear. One wrong word, one mistake, and they could be next. The Roman master, Titus, shouted, "This is what happens when you steal bread, even crumbs." Marcus hadn't stolen anything. The rats had eaten the grain from the storeroom, but Titus refused to believe it. Now Marcus was tied to a wooden pole in the center of the courtyard, the whip slicing into his skin under the hot Roman sun. He felt dizzy. His knees buckled, but the ropes held him up. Crack! He gasped. The pain made his vision blur. Somewhere behind him, he could hear his friend Livia sobbing. "Please," she cried. "He didn't do it." Titus turned to her. "You want to take his place, girl?" Livia's voice shook. "Yes, I will." The courtyard went silent. The other slaves held their breath. Even the whip holder, a strong man with arms like tree trunks, paused. Titus raised an eyebrow. "Very well." He nodded once, and the guards untied Marcus, letting him collapse on the ground. Livia stepped forward, her thin body trembling. She looked so small, standing next to the pole. As she was tied in Marcus's place, Marcus tried to rise, to stop it, but he couldn't move. The last thing he saw before passing out was the whip flying through the air toward Livia. And then, 3 months earlier, Marcus had been a free boy running through the wheat fields of Gaul. He and his sister, Unia, had played by the river, tossing pebbles and laughing as the sun warmed their backs. Their village was quiet, peaceful. The Roman soldiers had not come that far before, or so they thought. But one morning, the sky filled with smoke. Unia grabbed Marcus's hand. "What's happening?" "I don't know," Marcus said. "Let's go check." They ran toward the edge of the village. Roman flags fluttered on tall spears. Soldiers in shiny armor marched in, shouting orders. People were running, crying, hiding. Marcus's father shouted for them to run, but it was too late. A Roman soldier grabbed Marcus by the arm and dragged him backward. "No," he yelled, kicking and fighting. "Let go of me," Unia screamed, trying to reach him, but another soldier held her back. "Stop," their father shouted, charging at the Romans with a farming tool. A soldier raised his sword. Marcus shut his eyes. He didn't see what happened, but he heard his sister scream. That was the last time he saw his family. He and Unia were thrown into a cart filled with other captured villagers. Some were children, some were old. All of them were scared. They traveled for days, getting little food or water. When they reached Rome, the captives were sorted. The strong were sold to rich houses. The weak. Marcus didn't want to think about what happened to them. He was bought by Titus, a wealthy man with a grand house full of marble and gold. Marcus was given rough clothes and told to scrub floors, carry water, clean out animal pens. Any mistake brought punishment. A slap, a shout, or worse. He met other slaves. Livia, a kind girl with bright eyes. Cassius, who had once been a teacher. And Nico, a boy about Marcus's age who had stopped speaking altogether. One day, while washing dishes in the kitchen, Marcus whispered to Livia, "I'm going to escape one day." She looked around nervously. "Don't say that out loud." "But I will," he said. "I'm not going to be a slave forever." "None of us want to be," she said softly. "But they catch everyone. And if they catch you, they do worse than whipping." That night, Marcus stayed awake in the straw-filled corner where he slept. He listened to the rats squeak and watched the moon through a tiny crack in the wall. He had to escape. He just had to wait for the right moment. But the next morning, disaster struck. Titus stormed into the storeroom, shouting, "Who ate the grain?" The sacks were torn open. Grain spilled across the floor. Marcus stepped forward. "It was rats. I saw them last night." "A likely story," Titus snapped. "You're lying." "I'm not." But Titus had already made up his mind. "Whip him," he ordered. Marcus fought, but the guards were stronger. They tied him up and dragged him outside. That was the day everything changed. The whip cracked. Marcus's body shook with pain. And then Livia stepped forward, brave and trembling. She offered to take his place. Now, tied to the whipping pole, she turned her head and whispered, "Run." Marcus blinked. "What? Run," she said again. "Find Unia." Get out of here. But the whip cracked again, cutting her off. Marcus crawled toward the side of the courtyard, hiding behind a stone basin. His mind was spinning. Could he leave Livia like this? Could he escape and return with help? Or would he be caught and punished even worse? He had to decide fast. Behind him, he heard the guard preparing to strike Livia again. He looked toward the open gate and toward his friend, and then a loud crash echoed across the courtyard. One of the guards shouted, "Fire! The kitchen's on fire!" Everyone turned. Smoke was rising into the sky. Marcus's heart pounded. This was it. He had a choice, and he ran. Marcus sprinted through the gate, his feet slapping against the dusty stones. His back burned, his legs screamed, but he didn't stop. Behind him, voices shouted. Bells rang. Smoke rose higher into the Roman sky. He ran down narrow alleys, past shops and carts, and staring faces. The market was full of people, free Romans buying fish, bread, and cloth. None of them cared about a limping, bloody slave boy pushing through the crowd. He ducked behind a stall selling olives and crouched low. His breath came fast and sharp. His heart pounded so loudly he thought others might hear it. "She stayed behind," he whispered. "Livia stayed so I could run." He wanted to cry, but he couldn't. He had to keep going. He had to find Unia. He had heard one of the guards mention something days ago. Something about a group of young slaves being sent to the mines in the south. "If your sister's lucky," the guard had said, laughing, "she'll last a week down there." Marcus didn't know where the mines were, but someone would. He waited until the street cleared, then crept out from behind the stall. He stole a ragged cloak from a laundry line and threw it over his shoulders, hiding his slave tunic. He rubbed dirt on his face to look more like a street beggar. The city was too big, too loud. Horses clattered down stone roads. Soldiers marched in groups. He stayed away from them. One look at his face, and they'd know. After an hour of walking, he reached the river. It was wide and slow, with boats tied along the edges. A man sat nearby, mending nets. He looked rough and sunburned, but kind. Marcus walked up to him, head down. "Please, sir, do you know where the mines are? The ones they send slaves to." The man looked up, frowning. "What's a boy like you want with a place like that?" "I have a sister," Marcus said. "She was taken. I have to find her." The man studied him for a moment. "You run away?" Marcus hesitated. The man nodded slowly. "I won't tell anyone. You look like you've been through enough." He reached into his bag and pulled out a crust of bread. "Eat." Marcus grabbed it and ate so fast he nearly choked. "South," the man said. "You'll need to follow the Appian Way. It's a long road, dangerous for a boy. There are bandits, wild dogs, and soldiers." "I'll go," Marcus said, "even if I have to crawl." The man gave him a water skin and pointed. "The road starts just past those hills. Stay out of sight." Marcus bowed. "Thank you. Good luck, boy." Marcus turned and ran again, his legs trembling. But the man was right. The road was long and hard. He walked through dry fields and thorny bushes, hiding whenever carts or patrols passed. One night, he slept in a barn. The next, under a tree. He had no shoes. His feet bled. He found food where he could. Wild berries, fallen fruit, a piece of cheese dropped by a traveler. Hunger gnawed at him every day. Once he was chased by dogs. He climbed a tree and waited until they left. Another time, he found a small farm where a girl about his age gave him a bit of soup and let him rest in the stable. She asked no questions. Days passed, maybe weeks. Marcus couldn't tell. But one morning, he reached a rocky hilltop and saw it. The mines. They looked like holes in the earth, black and deep. Slaves moved in and out like ants, their clothes in rags, faces covered in dust. Guards with whips stood near the entrance, shouting. Marcus crouched low, watching. Could Unia be down there? He waited until sunset. Then, using shadows as his cover, he crept closer. A group of tired slaves was being marched out of the mine. One of them was a girl with tangled brown hair. She limped, dragging her feet. "Unia," he whispered. The girl turned. It was her. "Marcus," she gasped. A guard heard and shouted, "Hey." Marcus grabbed her hand. "Run." They turned and bolted. The guards yelled. A dog barked. Arrows whizzed past them. One hit the ground inches from Marcus's foot. They ran into the woods, ducking under branches, jumping over roots. They didn't stop until their legs gave out. Then they lay on the ground, gasping side by side. "I thought you were dead," Unia whispered. "So did I." She turned to him. "You came back for me." "Of course I did." They hugged tightly. That night, they slept under a tree, arms around each other. But the next day brought more danger. They woke to the sound of voices. Roman voices. A patrol was coming. Marcus shook Unia. "We have to go." They ran again, but Unia's ankle was swollen. She couldn't move fast. "We need to hide," she cried. Marcus saw a pile of rocks nearby. "There!" They crawled behind the rocks just as the patrol passed. One soldier paused. His eyes scanned the area. Marcus held his breath. Unia's hand gripped his tightly. The soldier stepped closer, then closer, and closer still. He stopped right in front of their hiding place. Marcus felt a drop of sweat roll down his neck. The soldier bent down. His hand reached for the rocks. And then a lion's roar echoed through the forest. The soldier froze. From the trees, a lion leapt. Not a real lion. One wearing armor, a gladiator in costume. He charged the patrol, swinging a wooden sword. "Run!" he shouted at Marcus. Marcus didn't wait. He grabbed Unia and ran again, deeper into the woods, not looking back. Who was that man? Why had he helped? And how did he know Marcus was hiding? Questions spun in his head as they ran. But Marcus didn't have time for answers. He and Unia were free, for now. But Rome wasn't done with them yet. And back in Titus's house, a different kind of trouble was rising. In the basement, a group of slaves whispered in secret. They were planning something. Something big. And Livia? She was right in the middle of it. Livia leaned against the cold stone wall of the slave quarters, her back burning from the whipping, though she never cried out. Not once. Her thin fingers trembled as she pressed a damp cloth to her wounds in the dim candlelight. Cassius, the former teacher, sat nearby. "You should have let him take the punishment, girl. That's how it works." "He wouldn't have survived," she whispered. "I had to." Cassius sighed. "Bravery like that gets people killed. Or it changes things," Livia said quietly. He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "What do you mean?" She glanced around. No guards. Just tired eyes and empty stomachs. She pulled a small piece of broken pottery from her pocket and scratched something into the dirt floor. A map. A path from the courtyard to the gates. Hidden passages. Weak spots in the walls. Escape routes. Cassius frowned. "Where did you get that?" "I've watched. Every day, every step the guards take. I know when the gate changes hands. I know when the dogs are fed and when the food carts come." He stared at her. "You're planning to escape?" "Not just me," Livia said. "All of us." There was silence in the room. Then Nico, who hadn't spoken in months, whispered, "All of us." Livia nodded. "Titus won't stop. We've been beaten, starved, sold like objects. We can't live like this forever." Cassius ran a hand through his gray hair. "It's suicide. It's freedom," Livia said. The others stared at the dirt map, unsure. But a spark had been lit. Far away, in the forest outside Rome, Marcus and Unia huddled in a cave. The gladiator who had saved them sat across from them, sharpening a real sword now. His name was Phalon. He was tall, broad, with rough hands and kind eyes. His skin was scarred and sunburned. "You're lucky I saw you," he said, nodding at Marcus. "Most kids don't make it this far." "Why did you help us?" Marcus asked. Phalon shrugged. "Because someone helped me once. I was a slave too, a fighter in the arena. But I escaped." Unia leaned forward. "Do you know how to fight Romans?" Phalon chuckled. "I fought lions, girl. Romans aren't much worse." Marcus sat up straighter. "Then teach me, please." Phalon raised an eyebrow. "You want to fight?" "I want to save the others," Marcus said. "My friend Livia, everyone's still trapped." Phalon studied him, then nodded. "Fine, but it won't be easy." And so the training began. Phalon showed Marcus how to grip a wooden sword, how to strike, how to duck and roll. Unia practiced too, though her ankle was still sore. They trained every day from sunrise to sunset, using branches, rocks, and sticks as tools. Marcus's arms ached. His legs burned, but he didn't give up. He remembered Livia's face, her voice telling him to run. He had to go back. He had to fight. After a week, Phelan stood back and crossed his arms. You're not bad, boy. Still slow, but not bad. Marcus smiled through his sweat. Thanks. Unia pointed toward the city in the distance. When do we go? Phelan's smile faded. You're not ready. But we have to. You don't understand, Phelan snapped. Rome eats people alive. You run in there without a plan. Without help, you'll be caught in a heartbeat. Marcus stepped forward. Then help us make a plan. Phelan looked at the siblings. Then, slowly, he nodded. All right, but we'll need more than just a map and swords. Back in the city, Livia's plan was spreading like fire. She whispered it during water breaks, during laundry duty, during the quiet moments before bed. And people listened. Even Cassius. There's a sewer gate under the kitchen, he told her one night. It hasn't been locked in years. We can slip out through it. Nico brought pebbles from the garden to sharpen into points. Even the cooks started saving bits of food, old bread, bruised apples for the night of the escape. But the danger grew with every passing day. One afternoon, while carrying laundry through the hall, Livia heard shouting. Titus! He stood in the courtyard, holding a scroll. A slave has escaped, he bellowed. The boy Marcus. Livia froze. Titus crushed the scroll in his hand. He is not to be helped. If any of you speak to him, or help him, you'll be fed to the beasts. A hush fell over the courtyard. Titus's eyes scanned the crowd. And if you're hiding anything, I will find it. Livia kept her head down. Her heart pounded. She had to move faster. That night, she and the others gathered behind the garden wall. We go in 5 days, she whispered, when the guards change shifts for the festival. Cassius handed her a rusted key. Found this under the barracks. Might unlock the sewer grate. Livia held it tight. Then we're ready. Or so she thought. The next day, disaster struck. Nico was caught sneaking out food. A guard grabbed him by the collar. What's this, boy? Nico tried to run, but they tackled him. Livia watched in horror as Nico was dragged away. Titus ordered him locked in the cellar. He'll be punished at sunrise. The slave's hope cracked. Cassius shook his head. We've been found out. No, Livia said. Not yet. We have to cancel the escape. We can't, she said firmly. We get Nico out. Then we go. Ow, Cassius asked. The guards will watch us like hawks. Livia stared at the courtyard. We start the fire again. Bigger this time. That night, Phelan and the children sat near the cave's entrance, drawing a map in the dirt. We go in from the sewer tunnel, Phelan explained. It leads straight to the servant's wing. If she's still in Titus's house, we'll find her there. Marcus clenched his fists. And the others? If they're smart, they'll already be moving. If not, he didn't finish. Unia pointed toward the city. It's time. Phelan stood. Then we go. They packed their bags, sharpened their tools, and began the journey back toward Rome. Every step brought them closer to danger, closer to home. Back at Titus's villa, a sharp smell filled the air. Smoke. The kitchen was on fire again, but this time it wasn't an accident. Livia threw a burning torch into the storage room and ran. Guards shouted. Slaves screamed. Flames rose high. In the chaos, Livia crept toward the cellar, the key clutched in her fist. She found the door, unlocked it, opened it. Nico, she hissed. He was curled in a corner, bloody and bruised. Can you walk? He nodded weakly. Then let's go. She helped him up, and they stumbled into the smoke-filled halls. The alarm bells rang louder. Guards were coming. Too many. They ran. But just as they reached the edge of the courtyard, a guard stepped in front of them, sword drawn. Livia froze. The man raised his weapon, and then a stone flew from the shadows, striking the guard's head. He collapsed. Livia turned. Marcus stood there, panting, dirty, holding a slingshot. Behind him, Phelan appeared with his sword, ready for battle. Unia rushed to hug Livia. The friends were together again. But alarms rang through the city. More guards were coming. They had to escape. Now, run! Phelan shouted, swinging his sword at the nearest guard. The man stumbled back, shocked by the sudden attack. Marcus grabbed Livia's hand. Come on. Unia helped Nico, who could barely walk, and together they rushed through the smoke-filled courtyard toward the hidden grate behind the kitchen. Flames licked at the walls, and thick black smoke curled into the sky like the breath of an angry god. The guards shouted orders, confused by the fire and the noise. Some tried to grab the escaping slaves, but Phelan fought like a lion, cutting a path through them. His wooden sword had been replaced by a real blade, one he had taken from a Roman patrol long ago. Cassius met them at the wall, his hands trembling as he pulled the sewer grate open with the rusted key. "Go," he hissed. "I'll hold it until you're through." Livia jumped into the tunnel first, helping Unia lower Nico inside. Marcus followed, then Phelan, who dragged the grate closed just as more guards rounded the corner. Cassius gave a final nod and vanished into the smoke. Inside the sewer tunnel, it was cold and wet. The water stank of waste and rot. Rats skittered around their feet. "Don't stop," Marcus said. "Keep moving." The tunnel was tight, and they had to crouch or crawl. The walls dripped with slime. At one point, Nico slipped and nearly went under, but Phelan caught him. They crawled for what felt like forever. Then, ahead, a sliver of moonlight. Livia gasped. "We're close." Marcus pushed forward, splashing through the shallow water. He reached the end of the tunnel and peered through the bars. They were outside the city now, near the old aqueduct ruins. "We made it," Unia whispered. Phelan reached into his pouch and pulled out a small iron rod. "Let's hope this works." He jammed it between the bars and twisted. There was a pop, then a groan of metal. One by one, they squeezed through the gap and emerged into the open air, muddy and soaked, but free. Phelan looked back toward the city walls. "They'll be looking for us soon." Livia turned to Marcus. "We can't leave yet." "What?" he asked, stunned. "There are still slaves inside Titus's house. Dozens, maybe hundreds. We freed a few, but the rest—" "She's right," Phelan said. This was only the beginning. Unia frowned. "What are we supposed to do? Go back?" "No," Livia said. "We go bigger." Marcus stared at her. "Ow! We start something," she said. "Not just a rescue. A rebellion." Phelan raised his eyebrows. "That's dangerous talk." "It's true," Livia said. "You saw what we did tonight. We beat them, even for a moment. What if every house, every villa, every farm heard what happened? What if every slave knew they could fight?" Nico looked up, eyes wide. "We be free." Unia bit her lip. "But we be hunted." Marcus stepped forward. "Then we stay hidden. We train. We wait. And when the time comes, we strike." Phelan grinned. "You're starting to sound like a general." Marcus smiled back. "I'm just getting started." 3 nights later, deep in the woods, the small group camped in silence around a flickering fire. They had found shelter in a ruined watchtower, long forgotten by the Romans. The stone walls were crumbling, but it kept the wind out. They had stolen blankets from a nearby outpost, and Phelan had hunted a deer, giving them meat for days. Still, no one felt safe. The forest echoed with strange noises: owls, wolves, the distant sound of marching boots. One night, while the others slept, Marcus and Phelan sat by the fire. "You think we really have a chance?" Marcus asked. Phelan didn't answer right away. He stared into the flames. "Rome is powerful, too powerful for kids to tear down in a day. But if you start small, free a village, take a fortress, spread the word, maybe—" "I want to try," Marcus said. "I want to do something big, something that matters." Phelan nodded. "Then we'll make a plan." But before they could speak more, a twig snapped in the dark. Phelan leapt to his feet, sword drawn. Marcus grabbed a stick and turned toward the trees. Figures stepped into the firelight. Not Romans. Slaves. Dirty, tired, scared. A girl stepped forward. "Are you Marcus?" He blinked. "Yes." "How do you know me?" "The boy who escaped Titus. The girl who burned his house. The gladiator who fights for slaves." Marcus looked at Phelan, then Livia. "You heard about us?" "Everyone has," the girl said. "We want to join you." Unia stepped out of the tower. "How many of you are there?" The girl looked behind her. More figures appeared. Dozens. Livia gasped. This is an army." Phelan chuckled. "Not yet, but it's a start." Marcus stepped forward, his voice firm. "Then we begin tonight. We'll train. We'll grow. We'll move from village to village." Unia added, "We'll take back what they stole." Nico raised his fist. "We'll make them afraid." The crowd cheered quietly. But far from the forest, deep in Rome, Titus sat in his study with a scroll in his hand. A letter. He read it slowly. His hands shook with rage. "My slaves have started a war," he whispered. He slammed his fist on the table. "Summon the Praetorians." The captain bowed. "Yes, master." Titus stood, his eyes dark with fury. "I will burn every forest, every cave, every village until I drag that boy back in chains." And in the woods, a spy, hidden in the trees, turned and ran. He had heard every word. He had seen the faces. He knew where Marcus and the others were hiding. And now, he was going to tell Rome. The spy moved like a shadow, weaving between trees, staying low to the ground. He wore the tattered clothes of a runaway, but his eyes were sharp and his mind was trained. He was not truly a slave. He had been planted, sent by Titus himself to pretend, to wait, to report. Now, with the memory of the hidden camp burned into his brain, he ran toward the nearest Roman outpost. His mission was clear: reveal the location of Marcus and the rebels before they grew too strong. Back in the ruined watchtower, Livia stood beside the fire, watching the newcomers settle in. They were all so young, most no older than Marcus. Some were just children, clinging to older siblings. They had cuts, bruises, hollow cheeks. But they were smiling. "We need to feed them," Livia said. Unia nodded. "We'll need more supplies. Blankets, bandages, food. We can't steal forever," Phalon added. "Sooner or later, the Romans will notice." Marcus sat near the fire, sharpening a stick into a spear. "Then we'll make them notice on our terms." Phalon gave a low whistle. "That sounds like the talk of a commander." "I'm not a commander," Marcus said. "I'm just tired of being scared." They were interrupted by the sound of drums in the distance. Everyone froze. Phalon stood quickly. No one moved. The sound grew louder, slow, heavy, marching drums. Roman drums. Unia grabbed Marcus's arm. "How did they find us?" Phalon's face darkened. "Someone told them." Livia looked around. "But who?" "We'll figure that out later," Phalon snapped. "For now, hide." The younger children were led into the cellar beneath the tower. Phalon and the older ones moved fast, covering footprints with pine needles, scattering campfire ash, and hiding weapons under loose stones. Then they climbed to the upper floor of the tower, peeking through cracks in the stone. What they saw made their blood run cold. Over a dozen soldiers in full Roman armor marched into the clearing, carrying torches. At the front rode a tall man with silver armor and a red cape. Titus. He had come in person. Marcus ducked down. "That's him." Phalon cursed under his breath. Of course he came himself. Arrogant fool wants to crush us with his own hands. Titus stood in the center of the ruined camp. "Bring them out," he barked. "Search the tower." The soldiers obeyed, fanning out. One walked straight toward the hidden cellar. Livia held her breath. The children inside were silent. Not a single cough, not a single cry. The guard passed by without noticing the trapdoor. But another soldier headed toward the stairs. Phalon looked to Marcus. "We fight if they come up here. No choice." Marcus nodded, tightening his grip on his makeshift spear. The soldier climbed the first step, then the second, then the third. A scream tore through the trees. Everyone turned. From a forest, a hail of stones and arrows rained down on the Romans. Dozens of figures charged from the trees, screaming war cries. They were older slaves, runaways from nearby farms and villas, armed with sticks, slingshots, and stone blades. Titus's men were caught off guard. Phalon grinned. "Looks like your rebellion's catching fire." He and Marcus raced down the stairs and joined the fight. The clearing exploded into chaos. Marcus swung his spear, knocking a soldier to the ground. Phalon disarmed another, using the man's own sword against him. Livia darted between the trees, throwing stones with deadly aim. Unia helped the children escape from the cellar, leading them toward the forest. The Roman lines began to break. They hadn't expected a real fight. They thought they were chasing scared children. But these weren't just runaways anymore. These were rebels. Titus fought too, cutting down anyone who came close. His face twisted with rage. "You think this changes anything? I own this land. I own you." Marcus faced him across the battlefield. "No," Marcus said. "Not anymore. He charged. Titus blocked the strike, laughing. "You dare fight me, boy? I've fought worse than you," Marcus said, and kicked him in the chest. Titus stumbled back, but before Marcus could strike again, a Roman horn blew. More soldiers were coming, double the number, pouring down the road like a river of metal. Phelon grabbed Marcus's shoulder. "We can't win this. Not today." Marcus looked at Titus, then at his people, terrified, running, limping, bleeding. "Fall back," he shouted. "Everyone, run to the woods." The rebels scattered. Phelon held the line, knocking back the soldiers long enough for the others to escape. Then he turned and followed them, vanishing into the trees. Titus stood in the ruined camp, breathing hard. His face twisted with fury. "Burn the forest," he said to his captain. "I want every branch, every root turned to ash. I want that boy in chains." "Yes, master," the captain said. Titus turned to the soldier beside him. "And find the spy. I want to know why the rebels knew we were coming." The soldier froze. "Spy?" "Yes," Titus snarled. "Someone warned them." Deep in the forest, the rebels regrouped by a small river. Phelon and Livia treated the wounded. Unia gave water to the little ones. Marcus sat on a log, blood on his hands, not his own. He stared into the trees. "We almost had him," he whispered. "But we lived," Livia said gently. "And we'll fight again." Phelon approached, grim. "They'll burn the woods. We can't stay here." Marcus stood. "Then we move. We find the next village, the next slaves. We grow stronger." Unia frowned. "But what if there's another spy?" There was silence. Then Marcus said, "We find them first." From the shadows, one figure stepped forward. A boy, one of the new arrivals. He trembled, looking at the ground. "I saw someone sneak away during the fight," he said. "A boy in rags." He ran toward the road before the Romans came. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Then he's the one." Livia stood beside him. "We'll find him." Phelon nodded. "And when we do, we send a message." "What kind of message?" Unia asked. Marcus looked toward the hills. The fires of Rome glowed in the distance, the kind they can't ignore. He turned back to the group. "Tomorrow," he said, "we take our rebellion to the next morning, Marcus stood on the edge of a cliff, staring out at the horizon. The fires from the Roman patrols still smoldered in the distance, thin plumes of smoke twisting into the sky like fingers trying to grab them back. The forest behind him was growing quieter by the hour. Animals had fled. The air stank of ash. The Romans were closing in. He felt it in his bones. But instead of running deeper into the woods, Marcus turned toward the city. "We're not hiding anymore," he said. Phelon stepped up beside him. "You're serious about going into Rome?" "They'll never expect it," Marcus said. "They think we're rats. Hiding. Scared. But rats bite." Livia joined them, her face bruised but fierce. "Then we bite them hard." Unia frowned, arms crossed. "But what can we do in Rome? There are guards everywhere." Marcus turned to the growing group behind them, now nearly 70 people strong. Slaves, runaways, even 2 former gladiators. They all looked tired, but they looked ready. "There's something we can do," he said. "We show the world we exist. We send a message so big, every slave from here to the sea hears it." He looked at Phelon. "What's the one thing Romans fear more than an army?" Phelon smirked. "A riot. Inside the city." Marcus nodded. "Exactly. If we strike right in the heart of Rome, where they think they're safe, it won't just be a message. It'll be a fire." Phelon looked at the others. "Then we go tonight. While the city celebrates Saturnalia, no one will expect anything. The guard will be drunk. The streets will be full of noise. Perfect cover." Livia turned to Marcus. "What's the plan?" "We break into the slave market." Everyone stared. "You mean the place where they sell people?" Unia asked. Marcus nodded. "Yes. We free everyone inside, and we burn it down." Gasps spread through the group. Some were afraid. Others looked thrilled. "You'll get us all killed," someone muttered. "No," Phelon said. "He might just wake the whole empire." That night, under a moonless sky, they moved like shadows. Wearing stolen cloaks and sandals, they crept through the side roads into Rome. The city was alive with Saturnalia celebrations, drums, laughter, fireworks. People wore masks and costumes. Even nobles walked the streets with commoners. Slaves were allowed to drink and pretend they were masters just for one day. It was the perfect disguise. Marcus and Unia moved through the crowd with Phelan, while Livia led a second group around the back of the market. The slave market was a high-walled square with barred gates and guard towers. Inside, rows of cages held men, women, and children waiting to be sold the next morning. Fires lit the square with a horrible golden glow. Marcus's heart pounded as they crouched near the outer wall. "We get in," he whispered. "We unlock the cages. We arm them. And when the fire starts, we fight our way out." Phelan handed him a pouch of oil. "You know what to do." Marcus nodded. He crept forward, crouching low behind a cart. One guard paced nearby, yawning and distracted by the sound of music from a nearby street party. Perfect. Marcus reached the gate and smeared the oil on the hinges. Then he struck flint, once, twice, until a spark caught the oil-soaked rag. The flame danced, then grew, then roared. The guard turned, too late. The gate burst into fire, and from the other side, Livia kicked the back gate open. Rebels poured in from both sides, shouting, throwing stones, swinging sticks, and stolen swords. The guards scrambled to respond, but they were few. Most had joined the Saturnalia festival. Marcus raced to the cages. "Wake up. We're here to free you." A young boy blinked from inside a cage. Who are you?" "Your brother," Marcus said, and smashed the lock. The cages opened, one after another. Livia tossed weapons, wooden clubs, iron rods, sharpened stakes, into their hands. The market filled with noise and fire. One by one, the slaves inside realized what was happening, and they joined the fight. Phelan fought like a storm, holding off the guards with powerful swings. Unia helped a limping old woman escape. Nico, finally strong enough to fight, used a sling to knock down a guard from a tower. It was working. Then, from across the square, a trumpet blasted. A new group of Roman soldiers charged in, fully armed, fully sober, and very, very angry. Marcus's heart dropped. "We have to go," Unia screamed. "Not yet," Marcus shouted, setting fire to a row of slave-selling tents. "Not until this place is ashes." The flames grew taller. Smoke poured into the sky. The city would see it. The Empire would see it. Phelan grabbed Marcus's shoulder. "They'll trap us if we stay another minute." Marcus nodded and blew a sharp whistle. "Retreat." The rebels began pulling back, helping the newly freed slaves escape through alleyways and tunnels that Livia had marked earlier. One by one, they slipped into the shadows, carrying the injured and leading the frightened. Marcus was the last to leave. He turned back just once and saw the slave market, burning, broken, and empty. And above it, painted on the wall in ash, "We are not property." They regrouped just outside the city, in an olive grove lit by the faint glow of stars. Marcus stood before the new arrivals, almost 100 now. Some cried, some hugged their families, some just stood in shock, staring at the open sky. "You're free now," Marcus said. "But freedom isn't safety. Not yet." He looked at their faces, so many different faces. Old, young, sick, strong. "We're going to build something," he said. "A place for all of us. A home, a camp, a village, a movement." Livia stepped up beside him. "And we're going to keep fighting." Phelan nodded. "Because Rome won't stop." Unia added, "So neither will we." Cheers echoed through the grove. But deep in Rome, Titus stood on the blackened steps of the slave market. His guard were silent, their faces pale from failure. Titus stared at the message painted on the wall. "We are not property." He crushed the paper in his hand. "Find him," he growled. "Find the boy. Bring me his head." "Yes, Dominus," the captain said. Titus turned to another man in a black cloak, hidden in the shadows. "And you," he said, "send in the hunters. Tell them it's time to release the beast." The cloaked man bowed and disappeared into the smoke. And far from the city, in a secret chamber beneath a Roman fortress, a new kind of weapon was waking up. A man trained only to kill. A slave catcher with no mercy. His name was Lucan, and he was coming for Marcus. The ground trembled as Lucan marched through the forest, his heavy boots crushing fallen branches. He wore no armor. He didn't need it. His body was covered in scars. each one a memory of a fight he'd survived. His eyes were cold and gray, like stones pulled from a frozen river. He was Rome's secret, a hunter trained from childhood to track and break runaway slaves. And now, Titus had released him. Lucan moved without sound, following the path through the woods. He crouched at a broken branch, touched it, sniffed the bark, then stood. "They passed through here," he muttered. "Not long ago." Behind him, a team of 5 silent men in dark cloaks followed. No banners, no shields, just ropes, knives, and chains. Lucan raised a finger. They moved out. Back in the olive grove, the rebels had started building. It wasn't much yet, just a few wooden shelters and fire pits, but it felt different. It felt like something permanent. Children played by the creek. Some of the older slaves built a lookout post on a nearby hill. The sound of hammering and laughter filled the air. For the first time in a long time, they weren't just running. They were living. Livia sat near the fire, cleaning a wound on her arm. Unia helped tie a new bandage. "You okay?" Unia asked. Livia smiled weakly. "Better than yesterday. Better than a cage." Marcus added, walking up with Phelan. "You were amazing back there." Livia shrugged. "We all were." Phelan nodded. Rome's going to feel that sting for a long time. But Marcus wasn't smiling. He was staring into the trees, quiet and still. Unia noticed. "What is it?" "I don't know," he said. "Something feels wrong." Just then, Nico came sprinting down from the lookout post, breathless. "Someone's coming. From a north trail." Phelan grabbed his sword. "How many?" "Just one," Nico said. "But fast." They rushed to the trail. A teenage boy, covered in sweat and dirt, stumbled into view. He waved his arms. "Help, please. They're coming." Marcus caught him before he fell. "Who's coming?" The boy's eyes were wide with fear. "A man, and 5 others. They caught my brother. We tried to leave Rome after the fire. He broke down into sobs. Phelan turned to Marcus. "He's real. The hunter. I thought it was just a story." "Not anymore," Marcus said. Livia's voice was sharp. "If he's that close, we need to move." Unia stepped in. "We can't run again. We just got here." "We're not running," Marcus said. "We're setting a trap." That night, the grove went silent. Fires were doused. Tents were hidden with branches. The children were sent into the caves below the hill, guarded by the oldest members of the group. Only Marcus, Phelan, Livia, and a handful of fighters stayed above ground. They waited and waited. Then, a branch snapped. Lucan stepped into the clearing, silent as death. His eyes scanned the trees. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword. Behind him, his men fanned out. He took one step, and the ground exploded. Marcus had spent hours digging shallow pits, covering them with leaves and twigs. As Lucan's men stepped forward, 2 of them fell in, shouting. A rain of rocks and spears flew from the trees. Phelan charged with a roar, sword swinging. Livia followed, hurling stones with deadly aim. Marcus aimed his slingshot and struck another of the cloaked men in the forehead, dropping him. It was working, but Lucan didn't flinch. He grabbed a flaming torch, hurled it at a tree, and fire bloomed. He charged through the chaos, heading straight for Marcus. Phelan saw him coming. "Marcus, move!" But Lucan was too fast. He tackled Marcus, slamming him to the ground. The air rushed out of Marcus's lungs. Lucan raised a knife. "You're the spark boy," he growled. "I snuff sparks." But before he could strike, Livia threw herself at him, screaming. Her shoulder slammed into Lucan's side, knocking him off balance. Marcus rolled away. Phelan leapt into the fight, sword clashing with Lucan's blade. The 2 men circled each other, metal flashing in the firelight. Lucan struck. Phelan blocked. Lucan kicked. Phelan stumbled. Lucan moved in for the kill, and Marcus drove a broken spear into Lucan's side. The hunter howled and swung wildly, striking Phelan in the chest with his fist and sending him flying into a tree. Livia grabbed Marcus's hand. "We have to go." "No," Marcus said. "Not until everyone's safe." Phelan coughed, blood at his lips. "Go." Marcus froze, torn. Then more rebels burst from the trees. Dozens. The rest of the group had returned, hearing the fight. Lucan looked around. He was outnumbered. He turned and fled into the woods, bleeding, snarling like a wounded wolf. The last of his men were either captured or unconscious. Marcus ran to Phelan's side. "You going to be okay?" Phelan smiled faintly. "That was a good fight. We won," Livia whispered, falling to her knees beside them. Phelan reached up and touched Marcus's shoulder. "You keep leading. They need you." Then his hand dropped. Phelan's eyes closed, and he was still. Marcus looked up at the night sky, full of smoke and stars. Another spark had gone out, but the fire was still burning. Unia stepped beside him. "What now?" Marcus stood slowly. "We bury him. Then we build stronger, bigger, safer." Livia nodded. "And when Lucan comes back?" Marcus's voice was steady. "Then we finish this, once and for all, far away, in the shadows of a ruined Roman fort." Lucan wrapped a cloth around his wound. He stared into the darkness, and he smiled. Rain poured from the heavens as Phelan was buried at the edge of the grove. The rebels stood in silence, soaked and shivering, heads bowed. They had no marble, no tomb, no carved stone. Just a mound of earth covered in wildflowers and 2 cross sticks to mark the spot. Marcus knelt beside the grave and pressed his palm to the wet soil. "I'll finish what you started," he whispered. "I promise." He stood slowly, his face hard and pale. He looked around at the faces of the people Phelan had fought to protect. Young, old, strong, weak, free for now, but hunted again. "We can't stay here," Marcus said. "Lucan will come back, and next time, he'll bring an army." Livia nodded, her cloak dripping. "We need to go underground. Hide where they can't follow." Nico, quieter than usual, stepped forward. "What about the catacombs?" Unia frowned. "The tunnels under Rome? They stretch for miles," Nico said. "Even the guards are scared to go down there. They say it's cursed." Marcus turned to him. "You've been there?" Nico nodded once. "When I escaped the first time, I lived down there for weeks." Marcus turned to the others. "Then that's where we go." The journey took 2 days through rain and mud. They moved in small groups to avoid detection, sticking to animal trails and abandoned roads. The youngest rode in handcarts pulled by the strongest. Livia mapped the path, marking safe places to rest. They passed burned villages, Roman patrols, and empty fields. They saw no sign of Lucan, but everyone knew he was out there, watching, waiting. By the 3rd night, they reached the outskirts of Rome. Nico led them to a collapsed temple, half covered in vines. He pushed aside a broken statue and revealed a dark hole in the earth. "This is it," he whispered. Marcus peered inside. It was like looking into the throat of a sleeping beast. They climbed down slowly, one by one, until the last foot disappeared into the earth and the jungle swallowed the entrance behind them. The catacombs were vast, cold, silent, and alive with echoes. The walls were carved from stone, stacked with bones. Skulls grinned from cracks. Narrow passages branched in every direction, like veins under the city's skin. But they were safe. For now, they lit torches, made camp in a large chamber with high ceilings and old Roman markings. They cleared bones to make room for beds. Livia organized the food. Unia watched the little ones. And Marcus, for the first time in days, allowed himself to breathe. "This could work," he said. Livia nodded. "It's hidden. They won't find us here." But not everyone was sure. Cassius, one of the elders who had survived Titus's house, spoke quietly that night. "We're surrounded by the dead. Children are sleeping beside bones. It's no place for life." Marcus looked around. "Maybe not, but it's where our life begins." He touched the broken statue, rubbed the moss from the stone, smelled the air. He found a footprint, small, barefoot, recent. He smiled. "They've gone below," he said to his new captain. The man shivered. "The catacombs are cursed. No one goes in there." Lucan stood. "I do. Underground, time moved differently." The rebels spent days carving out their new home. They made beds from straw and rope, dug drains to keep the water out, hung torches to light the darkest halls. They called the place Libertas, Latin for the freed one. Word spread quickly. More runaways came. Some were injured. Some carried babies. Some had been whipped so badly they could barely speak. But all of them brought stories. Stories of Titus. of new slave markets being built, of tighter chains and harsher laws. The rebellion had scared the masters. Now the masters were striking back. "We have to hit them again," Livia said one night, sitting beside Marcus. "But smarter," Unia added. "We can't win a war out in the open." Marcus nodded. "Then we turned the catacombs into a weapon." He drew a map in the dirt, outlining the tunnels. "We use these paths. Strike and vanish. Hit them where they feel safe." "You want to become ghosts," Cassius said, watching from the shadows. "Not ghosts," Marcus said. "Fireflies." They moved in silence, glowing, spreading, unstoppable. That night, Marcus, Livia, and a small team crept into the city. They wore cloaks and walked with the crowds. It was a nobleman's wedding. Lamps lit the streets. Music played. Slaves served food. Marcus slipped into the kitchens, where the cooks barked orders at tired workers. He found 3 slave boys peeling onions. He whispered, "You don't have to stay." One looked up. "Who are you?" "Someone like you. Someone free." He dropped the token into the boy's hand. A piece of carved bone marked with a firefly. "Come to the temple ruins," Marcus said. At midnight. Then he was gone. By morning, 3 more had joined them, and 3 more the next day. They moved like whispers now, lighting small fires across the empire. But Lucan was still watching, still tracking, still hunting. One morning, Unia screamed. Nico was gone. All they found was his bracelet, placed carefully on his bedroll, with a message carved into the stone beside it. One by one, Marcus's heart turned cold. "He's here," he said. Livia trembled. "He found us." That night, Marcus gathered everyone in the central chamber. "We've waited long enough," he said. "Lucan wants to take us out one by one, so we take him out first." Unia stood beside him. "He's stronger, faster, but not smarter," Livia added. "We know these tunnels. He doesn't." Marcus raised his torch. "We're going to trap him in the dark." For the back of the chamber, a voice rose. "I know how." Everyone turned. It was the spy, the boy who had warned them weeks ago, the one who'd seen his brother taken. "I saw where Lucan makes camp," he said. "A fort near the Appian Gate. I can get you there." Marcus stepped forward. "Then lead the way." They would go to Lucan, not to hide, not to flee, to end this, one way or another. But as they left the catacombs, following the spy through winding tunnels, none of them noticed the extra footprints in the dust behind them. Lucan was already inside. The catacombs were too quiet. As Marcus and his team moved through the tunnels, torches flickering, the silence wrapped around them like a snake. Even the youngest rebels didn't speak. Their eyes darted to every corner, every shadow. Livia walked beside Marcus, clutching a short blade Phelan had given her before he died. Unia carried a pouch of smoked dust, crushed herbs mixed with ash and dry moss. It burned fast and filled the air with choking smoke. If they needed to vanish, it would buy them time. The spy led them through the winding stone halls, deeper than they'd ever gone. "Lucan's camp is through this old water shaft," he said, pointing toward a narrow tunnel that sloped upward. "The other end opens near the Appian Gate." Marcus nodded. "We get close, set the traps, and draw him out." "But what if he doesn't chase us?" Unia asked. Livia smirked. "He will. Hunters don't ignore bait." They pressed on, the damp walls closing in as the tunnel narrowed. But behind them, Lucan watched from the dark. He didn't need a torch. He had hunted in shadows all his life. Every sound, every breath, every drop of sweat, the rebels were loud as bells to him. He moved silently behind them, like a shadow stitched to their heels, waiting, smiling. Hours passed. At last, the tunnel opened into a small cave just below the surface. From the cracks above, faint moonlight spilled down. They were near Rome again. They could feel it in the hum of distant carts, the muffled sounds of guards shouting commands far above. The spy stopped and pointed. "There, that's the ladder up to Lucan's camp." Marcus stepped forward to climb it, when a voice echoed from the tunnel behind them. "Low, calm, cold. You're all very brave." Everyone froze. Then Lucan stepped from the shadows. Livia gasped. Unia dropped her pouch. Marcus turned slowly, heart hammering. Lucan stood tall, his cloak dripping with the moisture of the tunnels. His face was expressionless, but his eyes burned like steel. "You planned this," Marcus said. "You let us walk right into it." Lucan tilted his head. "You've grown clever, but not clever enough." He raised his hand. The spy grabbed Marcus and shoved him to the ground. Livia screamed. He betrayed us. The spy, no longer afraid, no longer trembling, smiled cruelly. "Lucan promised my brother's freedom. That's all I wanted." Lucan unsheathed his blade. Now little rebellion ends. But before he could strike, boom, smoke exploded in the tunnel. Unia had dropped her pouch on purpose. Thick gray mist filled the cave, choking the air. People coughed, stumbled. Shadows danced. "Run!" Marcus shouted. They scattered. Lucan lunged forward, swinging blindly. His blade scraped stone. Marcus grabbed Livia's arm and pulled her into a side tunnel. Unia followed. "This way. I know another exit." Behind them, Lucan snarled, but they had vanished into the smoke. The rebels regrouped in a lower chamber deep in the catacombs. The betrayal had cut deep. Cassius paced furiously. "We took that spy in. We gave him food. He was scared," Marcus said. "He made a choice. A bad one." Unia snapped. Livia sat quietly, her back against the wall. "We need to hit back. We need to end Lucan before more of us die." Cassius looked at Marcus. "He'll be hunting us harder now." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then we set the final trap." Over the next 2 days, the catacombs turned into a battleground. Marcus led a small team to collapse certain tunnels, routes Lucan might take. Unia rigged chambers with smoke bombs and tripwires. Livia taught the young ones to run when they heard a bell ring 3 times. Once for warning, twice for hiding, 3 for escape. They used bones as bait, left false trails with stolen sandals and cloaks. They carved symbols into walls to lead Lucan into dead ends. And at the very center of the maze, in the deepest chamber of all, Marcus prepared the final room. It had only one way in and no way out, unless you knew the secret passage. That night, as the wind howled above the city and thunder cracked in the skies, Lucan entered the catacombs again. Alone, he moved with purpose. He followed the signs, just as every turn led him deeper, every path more narrow, until he stepped into the final chamber. A torch flickered on the far wall. A single figure stood in the center. "Marcus." Lucan smiled. "You came alone." "No," Marcus said. "I came with a plan." Lucan charged. Marcus turned and ran, straight into the trap. Lucan chased him through a narrow tunnel, then stopped. The floor crumbled. He fell into a pit lined with sharp stone shards. He caught the edge just in time, his fingers gripping the stone. Marcus stood above him, breathing hard, sweating, watching. Lucan looked up, eyes wild. "Finish it," he hissed. "Be the killer you think you are." Marcus shook his head. "I'm not like you." He turned and walked away. Lucan roared, trying to pull himself up. Just then, the rock under his fingers cracked, and he fell. The sound echoed through the tunnels. Then silence. Unia stepped beside Marcus. "Is it over?" Marcus stared into the dark pit. "For now." Livia appeared, carrying a torch. "The others are safe. The spy is gone. The tunnels are sealed." Marcus took a deep breath. It felt final. But far above, in the Senate chambers of Rome, new whispers were stirring. Titus stood before a council of powerful men. He dropped a piece of charred bone onto the marble floor. "They've killed Lucan," he said. "The boy and his rebels have humiliated us." A senator sneered. "What would you have us do?" Titus leaned forward. "Burn the whole countryside. Empty the prisons. Flood the catacombs. Let them drown in their own courage." Another senator added, "And if that fails?" Titus smiled cruelly. "Then we send in the legions." And beneath Rome, as Marcus slept for the first time in days, a drop of water fell from the ceiling of the catacombs. Then another, then another. The flood had begun. Drip, drip, drip. At first, no one noticed the sound. The catacombs were always damp. Water often trickled through cracks in the stone ceilings. But by the next morning, puddles had formed along the floors. Small streams snaked through tunnels that had once been dry. Unia splashed through one of the narrow corridors, her sandals soaked. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Livia met her at the main chamber. It's getting worse. There's water in the sleeping rooms. Some of the lower tunnels are already flooded. Marcus crouched beside a growing pool, watching ripples spread across the surface. It's not just rain. They're flooding the catacombs. Cassius stormed in, holding a piece of parchment soaked in mud. Found this near the tunnel mouth. He slammed it on the table. The message was short, written in bold Roman letters. Sink with your bones, or come up and burn. Marcus stood slowly, his jaw clenched. They're giving us a choice. Die in the dark, or come into the light and face their swords. Livia stared at the message. So, they know we're here. They've known for days, Cassius muttered. And now, they're done playing. The flooding worsened. Tunnels caved in under the pressure of water, surging through old aqueducts. Stone walls split, sending dirty torrents through sleeping areas. Children screamed as beds floated, torches fizzled out, and black water rose inch by inch. Unia organized an evacuation team. We need to get the little ones to higher tunnels. Cassius helped the wounded. This chamber's caving in. We need to move now. Marcus turned to Livia. How many people do we have left? Nearly 200, she said, eyes wide. But half of them are too weak to fight. We're not going to fight, Marcus said. We're going to outsmart them. With the water at their heels, Marcus led the rebels through the narrowest passageways, ones not on Roman maps. Nico had once mentioned a tunnel that led under the old city wall, long forgotten and sealed from the outside. If it could be reopened, it's our only way out, Marcus said. But if we're going to survive, we need to buy time. I'll stay back, Cassius said. What? Unia cried. You can't. I'm old girl, he said softly. I can hold them off for a while. Enough to let the children pass. Marcus reached out, gripping the old man's arm. Thank you. Cassius smiled. Don't thank me yet. Get them to safety. They parted in the dripping dark. Minutes later, as Roman torches lit the tunnels behind them, Cassius stood in the middle of a collapsed chamber, holding a torch and an old oil jug. Come then, he shouted into the dark. Let's see if you bleed like us. He hurled the torch. Flames erupted. The tunnel roared. Meanwhile, Marcus led the others to the sealed tunnel. Water rushed behind them, up to their ankles, then knees. They reached the wall. It was sealed with stone and old iron bars, rusted and ancient. Unia grabbed a hammer. We can break it. Livia joined her. Help us. Marcus turned to the children. Stay close to the wall. Don't move. He helped slam rocks into the gate, over and over. It cracked, then again, and again, until, crash, the wall gave way. Fresh air burst into the tunnel like a gift from the gods. Behind them, the water howled, chasing their heels. Marcus turned. Go, go. One by one, they poured through the tunnel, gasping for breath as they emerged into a broken cellar behind a vineyard, abandoned and quiet. Marcus was the last one through. He turned just in time to see the water reach the tunnel's edge. And behind it, Lucan, soaked, bleeding, alive. The flood hadn't claimed him. Their eyes locked for one breathless moment. Then Marcus kicked a broken stone into the tunnel entrance. The ceiling collapsed. The water rushed back. Lucan disappeared in the wave. And Marcus fell to his knees, breathing hard. They had escaped. Again, the rebels didn't stop. They ran through the fields, carrying the wounded, hiding beneath wagon covers and inside hay carts. Farmers gave them bread. Shepherds gave them shelter. Some Roman citizens looked away in silence, pretending not to see. They headed east, away from the city, toward the mountains, toward freedom. But Marcus knew Rome would not stop. As they rested one night beneath the stars, Livia sat beside him. We lost so many, she whispered. I know. Do you think Lucan's dead? Marcus looked at the stars. I hope so, he said, but I don't believe it. She didn't either. Unia approached. What now? Marcus stood. He looked out at the plains, stretching ahead. We build again. Farther this time. Deeper. And when we're ready. He paused, eyes glowing with fire. We go back. Livia frowned. To fight. To finish it, Marcus said. Not just for us. For every slave still in chains. From the shadows, Nico stepped forward. He had been found 2 nights before, beaten, weak, but alive. I'll fight, he said. I will too. Unia whispered. Livia smiled. We all will. Marcus turned to face the group, his voice strong and clear. Rome thinks we're gone, but we're rising. And this time, he raised his fist to the sky. We don't stop until the empire falls. And far behind them, in the dark ruins of the flooded tunnels, something stirred. A hand, a breath. Lucan was alive. Snow dusted the mountaintops as Marcus and the rebels climbed higher into the hills. The wind stung their cheeks, and the cold bit through their thin cloaks, but no one complained. After all they had survived, chains, whips, fire, water, betrayal, the cold was nothing. They called their new camp Alta Libertas, High Freedom. It was hidden among the cliffs, surrounded by forests and sheer drops. Even Roman eagles would have trouble finding it. And that was the point. Livia stood watch every night, scanning the valley below for signs of soldiers. Nico trained the younger rebels how to use slings and climb walls. Unia kept the food stores organized and taught the smallest children how to stay quiet and quick. And Marcus? He trained. Every morning, before the sun rose, he ran along the cliff paths. He practiced with a sword Phaelon had left behind. He remembered every word the gladiator had ever told him. Use your speed, not your strength. Think with your feet. Strike from the shadows. The rebels were no longer just survivors. They were becoming an army. One morning, Livia rushed into the meeting cave. Her cheeks were red from the wind. They're burning villages, she said. Rome is punishing anyone who helped us. Marcus jumped to his feet. Where? South of the valley. I saw smoke. Unia followed her in, face pale. I heard something worse. They're building a prison. A special one. For rebels. Cassius coughed behind them, older now, but still sharp. Titus calls it Domus Servorum Infractorum, the house for broken slaves. Marcus stared at the fire. How many have they taken? Livia hesitated. At least 30. Maybe more. Then we're going to break them out, Marcus said. That night, Marcus drew a plan in the snow using a stick. The prison lay between two hills, surrounded by wooden palisades and 4 watchtowers. Fires burned at every corner. Slaves were shackled to posts in the open yard, even in the snow. It's not a prison, Marcus said. It's a warning. Then we turn it into a message, Livia replied. Cassius shook his head. They'll be ready this time. They know your tricks. Marcus smiled slightly. Good. Let them be ready. The next day, the rebels began their descent. Wrapped in white furs and mud-streaked cloaks, they blended with the snow-covered woods. By nightfall, they reached the edge of the forest near the prison. Unia pointed at the guard towers. They rotate shifts every hour. That one's blind on the west side. Nico rolled out a small sack of beeswax pots. I made smoke bombs. Like before, Marcus raised a finger. We hit them fast. Free the prisoners. Burn the watchtowers. Then vanish. Cassius handed Marcus a rolled-up map. There's a supply tunnel under the west wall. Old Roman design. No one remembers it's there. Livia nodded. Then that's our way in. The wind howled through the trees as the rebels moved into place. Marcus, Unia, Livia, and Nico crawled toward the west wall. Snow crunched softly under their knees. The guards didn't notice. They found the tunnel entrance, a cracked stone grate hidden under frozen vines. Marcus whispered, now. They slipped inside. Darkness swallowed them. The tunnel smelled of mold and dust. Their torches barely lit the way, but they reached the inner wall, where a rusted ladder led up to a wooden trapdoor. Marcus pushed it open slowly. They emerged behind the prison kitchens. Smoke rose from a chimney, and a guard nearby yawned and picked his teeth. Unia crept up behind him and tapped his shoulder. He turned, just as she hit him with a club. The man crumpled. Still got it, she whispered. They slipped into the yard, hiding in shadows. The other rebels moved into position outside the walls. Marcus knelt beside a shivering prisoner. The man's face was covered in bruises. Ooh, he croaked. Friends, Marcus said. Stay low. Help is coming. He raised his hand. Nico lit the smoke pots. Boom! Smoke erupted through the yard. Confused shouting. Coughing. Guards stumbled, blind. The rebels charged in. Livia slashed a chain with a hammer. Unia guided the weak to the tunnel. Nico threw pots into the towers, choking the guards. Marcus swung his blade, blocking a soldier's spear. You again, the soldier growled. Marcus grinned, still standing. He knocked the man flat with a kick, then ran for the prisoner's cells. He burst through the gate and stopped. Inside, chained to the wall, Phelan, alive, beaten, but alive. Marcus, Phelan whispered, eyes wide. I thought you were dead. Not yet, Phelan smiled weakly. Marcus broke the chains, then turned. Lucan stood in the doorway. His cloak was torn. His eye was bandaged. But he was alive, and he looked furious. Don't move, Lucan said. Marcus pushed Phelan behind him. It ends here. Lucan drew his blade. I agree. They charged. The fight was fierce. Metal clashed. Sparks flew. Lucan was fast, but Marcus was faster. He ducked a slice, jabbed forward, struck Lucan's leg. Lucan roared and slammed Marcus against the wall. Pain exploded in Marcus's chest. Lucan raised his sword. Then, crack! Livia tackled him from the side. Lucan fell hard, smashing into the stone. Unia appeared and hurled a smoke bomb. The chamber filled with dust. They grabbed Phelan and ran. Outside, fires raged. The prison burned. The rebels vanished into the forest, dragging the freed prisoners behind them. Lucan crawled from the rubble. He screamed at the smoke and the sky. The rebels had escaped again, and this time, they'd taken back one of Rome's most feared warriors. Back in the mountains, Phelan sat beside the fire, wrapped in furs. Thought I was done for, he chuckled. Marcus smiled. Not yet. We still need you. Unia hugged him tight. We all do. Livia stood and looked around the cave. We're more than a rebellion now, she said. We're hope, Marcus added. And far below, in the scorched ruins of the prison, Titus rode in on a black horse. He stared at the burned walls, the freed slaves, the broken chains. He turned to his captain. No more warnings, Titus said coldly. Call the Senate. Tell them we are at war. And in the mountains, Marcus sharpened his blade. They were ready. Snow melted slowly as spring bloomed across the mountains. Streams ran clear again. Trees turned green. But Marcus felt no peace. He stood at the edge of the cliff, overlooking the valley. Below, thousands of Roman soldiers marched in tight columns. Their armor flashed like silver fish in a stormy sea. Banners snapped in the wind. Horns blared. The legions had come. Rome was not sending patrols anymore. It was sending everything. Unia stood beside him, her face tight with worry. There are too many. Marcus didn't speak. Behind them, in Alta Libertas, the rebel camp had transformed. What had once been straw huts and dirt trails were now sturdy shelters, stone towers, traps, and watchposts. They had food, weapons, courage, but numbers? Rome still had more. Livia approached. We hold the ridge. That's the only way. Phelan, wrapped in layers and walking with a limp, joined them. And if they climbed the ridge? Marcus finally turned. Then we make them regret it. At night, the valley below glowed with Roman campfires. Music, chanting, and laughter echoed up the hills, arrogant, fearless, unbothered. The rebels stayed quiet, watching, waiting. The next morning, the earth shook. Titus rode at the front of the army on a war horse, his armor darker than night, his eyes filled with rage. He raised a horn to his lips. Bwam! The hills trembled. The war had begun. Roman catapults hurled fire into the trees. Arrows flew like rain. But the rebels didn't fight in the open. They fought like ghosts, vanishing into forests, reappearing behind enemy lines, striking and retreating. They rolled boulders down slopes. They triggered traps in narrow passes. They lit the trees on fire, choking the Roman advance in smoke. Still, the legions pressed forward. They were endless. Phelan led the front line, holding back wave after wave. His sword never slowed. His voice never wavered. Unia worked the signal drums, sending orders across the mountain. Livia led small squads through secret tunnels, rescuing the wounded and sabotaging Roman supplies. Marcus? He fought like a storm. He struck from above. He leapt from trees. He led charges into the fire. But even storms get tired. By the fourth day, the rebels were pushed back to the final ridge, the spine they called it. a narrow path along a cliff where only 10 soldiers could march side by side. It was their last defense. Marcus stood with Phelan, Livia, Unia, Nico, and every fighter they had left. The wind howled. Snowflakes fell again. Across the ridge, Titus appeared. He rode slowly, smug. Behind him stood Lucan, alive, barely. His face was bruised, his arm in a sling, but his eyes still burned. Titus raised his hand. "No more running, boy," he called across the ridge. "Bow now, return to chains, and I might let the little ones live." Marcus stepped forward. He held something in his hand, a small piece of broken pottery, the map Livia had once drawn in the dirt. He threw it into the wind. "No more chains," Marcus said. "Not for us, not for anyone." Titus's smile vanished. He shouted. The Romans charged, and the final battle began. It was thunder and lightning, fire and steel. The rebels held the ridge like lions. Every step the Romans took, they paid for in blood. Phelan fought until his sword shattered, then used his fists. Unia fell, then rose again, swinging a torch. Livia saved a dozen fighters, dragging them from the edge of death. Marcus fought until he couldn't lift his arm. Then, the horn blew again. Bwam! But this time, it wasn't a Roman horn. From the other side of the valley, hundreds of new figures appeared. Peasants, farmers, slaves from other cities. They had come. Word had spread. The fire had caught. They charged from behind, flanking the Roman army. Titus turned, screaming orders, but it was too late. The rebellion was no longer a spark. It was a firestorm. Rome fell back, retreated, shouted for help, but help never came. When the dust cleared, the valley was silent. Bodies lay everywhere, but the ridge stood. Marcus stood. He was bleeding, exhausted, but alive and free. He raised his fist high. The rebels cheered, all of them, even the new ones who had only just arrived. Lucan was gone, vanished in the chaos. Titus had been taken. He now sat in the same chains he had once placed on others. And Rome? It had finally lost. Weeks later, in a rebuilt village near the base of the mountains, Marcus stood before a gathering of thousands. They had no king, no master, no slaves, only people, equal and strong. "Rome tried to silence us," he said, "but we spoke louder. They tried to chain us, but we broke free. And now," he smiled, "we build something better." Livia placed a hand on his shoulder. Unia passed him a scroll. It was the beginning of something new. The Pact of the Free, a promise to protect each other, to never return to chains, and to never stop fighting for those still enslaved. As the crowd cheered, a firefly landed on Marcus's hand. Tiny, bright, unbreakable, just like them.